Revealed, the incredible moment a single dad CEO transformed a blind date into an amazing connection. Max's heartbeat clashed with the clatter of dishes in the bustling restaurant. The thought of juggling yet another date felt heavy in the air, like the weight of the world resting squarely on his shoulders. As a 34-year-old tech startup CEO, Max was used to navigating the tightrope of boardrooms, product launches, and relentless deadlines. But tonight, he was struggling with something entirely different, allowing himself to be vulnerable, to step outside the high-pressure expectations of his life. Seated at the small, dimly lit table, Max absently tapped his foot against the leg of the chair. He scrutinized the menu while wrestling with the internal battle echoing in his mind. Is this a mistake? Do I really have time for a relationship? He cast a glance at the door, assuming the worst that he'd be stuck here, trying to impress someone who could never understand the whirlwind of his dual existences. He sighed. Anxiety twisted in his stomach. He just wanted to go home to Mia, his 7-year-old daughter. She was the joy amid the chaos, yet the all-consuming demands of the tech world often left him feeling pulled apart at the seams. When Caroline walked in, bright-eyed and radiating passion, it threatened to unravel the tidy picture he'd drawn of himself. What could this kind woman, devoted to her cause of helping underprivileged youth, possibly see in him? Their conversation initially flowed, rich with shared values, love for family, the struggles they faced, but the moment they touched on economic disparity, the air grew thick. Max felt the weight of his privilege suffocating him. She was speaking of her day-to-day battles, the children she tried to help, and his familial concerns felt hollow by comparison. That realization tightened around him, a vice of discomfort. The transition from emotional connection to revelation clawed at his insides, igniting feelings of guilt and inadequacy. Was he hiding behind his wealth while people like her dedicated their lives to helping others? Before the tension could choke him, an urgent message flashed across his phone. Mia fell. A panic surged through him, instantly overriding any notion of charm or casual conversation. I have to go, he blurted, his voice edged with fear. Caroline's eyebrows shot up, surprise etched on her face, but that didn't stop her from asking for details, extending her compassion. Max was dumbfounded as the restaurant buzz faded away, focused only on the swirling anxiety inside him. He was already questioning if everything this date, his career, was secondary to the dread of something possibly happening to the only thing that mattered to him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Standing at the precipice of commitment, he took a breath. The night unfurled with possibilities and uncertainty. What if he dared to bridge the gap? What if he embraced this strange and captivating woman who understood? But the weight of societal expectations hovered above him like storm clouds. Could he truly step outside the confines of his carefully constructed life for a chance at something deeper? Was love, in all its messy glory, worth risking his status, his careful control? As he pushed through the door, merging into the night, the question echoed in the recesses of his mind, a haunting reminder of the paths he could take: complete the isolation of his responsibilities or risk everything for a connection that was beautiful, messy, and full of unanticipated hope. Max navigated the dimly lit streets, gripping the steering wheel of his car with a sense of urgency that mirrored the chaos within his mind. Mia's fall replayed in his thoughts like a relentless loop, punctuating each moment with the kind of dread that settled deep in his gut. He could almost hear Caroline's voice in the back of his head, a voice that had ignited his courage to explore vulnerability now tangled with guilt. Was it possible for two worlds to coexist? Pulling into the driveway, he pushed the car door open, but instead of rushing inside, he paused on the steps, studying the warmth spilling from the window. Mia was laughing, a bubble of joy, completely unfazed by the world outside. He took a deep breath, feeling a twinge of guilt for not being there, yet he also acknowledged the fierce love that kept him working late nights, bending over spreadsheets, and pitching to investors. Here he was, a man torn between two irreplaceable commitments: his daughter and the burgeoning relationship that had just begun to stir inside him. Once inside, he rushed past the clutter of toys and art supplies in the living room, searching for Mia. She was sitting on the floor, a bright red bandage decorating her knee, a mischievous grin plastered on her face. "Dad, look! I'm a pirate!" she exclaimed, clutching a toy sword, her imagination unbridled by reality. Relief flooded him. She was all right. Yet, beneath that relief, a question burgeoned: was he really being the father she needed? The hours spent at work, the late dinners, and the missed school functions had started to weave a fabric of guilt that wrapped tighter around his heart. He knelt down beside her, laughter and pretend sword fights breaking down the walls he'd built around himself. "A pirate, huh?" he responded, voice softening. "Do pirates need a first mate? Because I'm ready for adventure." As they played, he caught glimpses of himself in Mia's laughter, the unrestricted joy that flooded her spirit. It was a raw reminder of all the things he had sacrificed for success and ambition to create a legacy paired with the responsibility of being a father. The lines began to blur, the pursuit of professional accolades felt increasingly hollow against the raw, unfiltered love radiating from Mia. But as the playful moments passed, reality crept in again. The looming specter of deadlines and company demands returned, wrestling for his attention. Suddenly, he heard the unmistakable chime of his phone. It was Caroline. With a heartbeat that pounded loudly in his ears, he picked up, debating if engaging with her would shift this budding connection into dangerous territory. "Hey, Max," her cheerful voice resonated, easing the tension within him. "Hey. Sorry if I cut things off earlier," he said, forcing a casual air despite the whirlwind thoughts swirling about his responsibilities. "Mia had a little accident." "Oh no. Is she all right?" "She is fine now, but it reminded me of how fragile everything is," he admitted, surprising himself with the candidness of his revelation. The silence on the other end felt heavy. "I understand fragility well," she finally said. "But it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to connect." Her words hung in the air, resonating as both a challenge and an invitation. Max felt an unfamiliar sense of determination bloom within him, yet it was clouded by an intense fear of vulnerability. Could he reframe his perspective and find a balance? Embracing the reality that love needed space to grow, not stifle underneath the weight of expectations, required a fundamental shift. The evening slipped into the stillness of the night, and as he hung up, he felt a new resolve crystallizing within him. Here he was navigating not just a dual life but a conflict of values demanding a choice. He grabbed a notepad, determined to chart a way forward. On one side, priorities stacked high for his company's success; on the other, the simple yet profound need to be present for Mia and potentially build something meaningful with Caroline. Only then could he begin to answer that haunting question deeply rooted in his heart. Stepping into the unknown of love, could it indeed be worth reshaping everything he had fought to create? As he stared down at the unfolding plans for tomorrow, an email pinged, rendering the night's peace as chaotic as his thoughts. That familiar name glared back: Clifford, the investor with whom he had a stormy past, was asking for a face-to-face meeting. Everything inside him tensed. It was time to confront the previous decisions that had held him captive. Turning back to Mia, he knew his life was about to change. But the question remained: would he choose to forge a new path or retreat into the shadows of the familiar? The moment of truth loomed just ahead. Max sat at the dining table, the crisp white notepad sprawled open before him, a stark canvas waiting for direction in a life splintered by competing interests. The chaotic environment of his thoughts buzzed like neon lights around his consciousness. He could feel the thin line of determination drawing him toward a decision that could reshape his understanding of happiness. With Mia still playing nearby, her laughter echoing like a song he desperately needed, he began to jot down points. The first was unavoidable: he would need to meet with Clifford. There was no escaping the meeting and what it represented. It was a necessary engagement that would either cement his standing or unravel it further. The fear of failure curled in his stomach, but beneath that fear lay something oddly potent, a desire to confront his past and own his present. The next point appeared as if responding to his subconscious. It was about carving out time for Mia, a commitment to show up for every school event, every play date. It felt small but monumental, an act of defiance against the notion that success required total immersion in work. He could be the father he wanted to be and still manage his aspirations. Then, Caroline lingered at the edge of his thoughts. The concept of opening his heart, confronting his fears of intimacy, would it lead to personal enrichment or heartbreak? His heart raced at the prospect of experiencing vulnerability again, the thrill of something real, yet the scars of previous disappointments lingered. He stilled his pen, breathing deeply. In that moment, he understood his reluctance wasn't a lack of desire, but apprehension, a defense mechanism built from past failures. The reminder that he was not the man he once was ignited something inside him, a flicker that demanded he take more risks. The image of Mia, embodying bravery and joy, washed over him. Kids didn't measure success by accolades, they valued presence, love, and adventure. Max finished jotting down his thoughts and glanced at Mia, now pretending to steer an imaginary ship. He could be the captain in her life, teaching her to navigate storms, both the literal ones of play and the metaphorical ones of life choices. Connecting more with her, embracing the turbulent but vital moments of fatherhood, would provide a solid foundation. He made a decision, one that felt both exhilarating and liberating. He resolved that the coming weeks would be dedicated to nurturing the dimensions of his life often overshadowed by ambition. Wednesday would be Mia Day, where he would take her on an adventure, just the two of them. The real challenge was outlining how to balance that day with the tense meeting with Clifford, but the thought left him both anxious and empowered. Just as he was about to scribble in the details for Wednesday, his phone pinged again. It was Caroline. The message read simply, "Are you still interested in meeting up? I really enjoyed our last conversation." This was the moment he had to wrestle with. Could he afford to open up that doorway while still piecing his other commitments together? Visions of Mia, sword drawn, danced in his head, reminding him that his decisions echoed far beyond the immediate circles of confrontation and business affairs. His fingers hovered over the screen. What would be the cost of saying yes? In that space, fear mingled with anticipation, resulting in a pulsating urgency. What if he was holding himself back from a deeper relationship with Caroline, just as he held himself back from fully embracing his fatherhood with Mia? The response was quick to formulate, each letter crossing the fine line between what he needed and what he feared. He pressed send, allowing the uncertainty to wash over him while the tension in his gut twisted with excitement and fear. Then, as he leaned back in his chair, the weight of the impending meeting with Clifford loomed over him like a storm cloud, but this time, he squinted through the darkness. Amidst that uncertainty, he realized he was stepping into the world with a newfound ambition, not just to succeed professionally but to navigate the more intricate waters of fatherhood and personal connection. With a mindset shifting, the moment of truth was upon him. But would he be able to rise to the occasion, embracing the uncertainty that lay ahead? The question lingered heavy in the air as he prepared for a week filled with decisions that could change everything. Max awoke the morning after sending his message to Caroline with a sense of unease clinging to him like an old coat. The sunlight spilled into his bedroom, inches of warmth that contrasted sharply with the chill of anxiety biting at his core. Today was the day he would either reclaim his footing or lose ground in both his personal and professional lives. He rolled out of bed, taking a moment to ground himself in the resolute stillness of dawn. As he moved through his morning routine, every action felt imbued with a greater significance. Each brushstroke against his teeth, each deliberate spatula flip of eggs in the pan magnified the weight of his aspirations. He was setting the stage not just for a meeting with Clifford, a man he had come to fear both as a boss and a reminder of his frailties, but also for what looked like a delicate rendezvous with Caroline. Mia bounded down the stairs, enthusiasm lighting up her face like the sun breaking through a fog. "Daddy, is today Mia Day?" she chirped, skipping to Max's side. The simple joy in her question ignited something deep within him. He wanted to be the man she believed he could be, the father who was present and engaged. "Yes, sweetheart," he replied, mimicking her giddy energy despite the underlying tension swirling in his own stomach. "Can we go to the park? I want to fly kites," she exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. "Of course, we can fly kites," he assured her, making a mental note to scour the garage for the old kites he had tucked away. This was more than a simple outing, it was a chance to showcase how he intended to manage his commitments. Later, as he stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie before the meeting with Clifford, he confronted his reflection. It was time to change the narrative he had been telling himself. He wasn't just a mid-level manager trying to prove himself, he was a father, a man embracing vulnerability, ready to transition from mere function to fulfillment. The meeting loomed ahead. As he stepped into the office building, doubt clawed at him, and the hum of the environment felt thick with expectations. But he couldn't allow fear to dictate his actions any longer. He focused instead on what Mia would need from him, the kind of example he wanted to portray. The small conference room felt cold, artificial light bouncing off the sterile walls. Clifford entered, businesslike and imposing. After some initial small talk, Max felt the weight of impending judgment. It was time to present his proposal, a new strategy to revitalize the project that had stalled. "Max," Clifford started, his voice severe, "I have to say, your approach lacks urgency. What is it you really think we need to get this moving?" Max took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. His heart raced, but clarity flooded his mind. He was no longer just fighting for his career, he was advocating for more than numbers. He was fighting to show Mia, to teach her that standing up for oneself was paramount. "The urgency lies in understanding our core audience, not just the metrics," he began, his voice steady. He unveiled his thoughts, turning fear into conviction, tapping into his newfound resolve rooted in fatherhood and connection. The words flowed naturally, addressing gaps between the team dynamics and operational objectives. As he spoke, he noticed Clifford's demeanor shift. His interest peaked, eyes narrowing with scrutiny and contemplation. Max felt alive, invigorated by the freedom of expressing his vision. For the first time, his ambition bore synergy with his identity as a father, a reflective voice built on personal experience, no longer fragmented. When the meeting closed, Clifford nodded appreciatively. "We'll take your recommendations seriously," he acknowledged, surprising Max triumphant. Max left the conference room, caught between relief and a new type of determination. Perhaps he wasn't just getting through the chaos, perhaps he was reshaping it. Later that evening, as he played with Mia in the park, the wind catching the kite as it soared above him, he felt a harmony he hadn't realized he was missing. Each throw of the string rekindled his belief that he could embrace both family and ambition. Later, his phone buzzed with a message from Caroline, "Looking forward to tonight. Can't wait to talk more." The anticipation thrummed under his skin, an electrifying reminder of the balance he was trying to maintain. Would this be a step toward embracing a deeper connection or just another distraction? Tonight, he would find out. His heart raced at the myriad possibilities flooding his mind. Max spent the remainder of the afternoon preparing mentally for his dinner with Caroline. He scribbled notes and thoughts in a notebook, focusing his energies on what he hoped to convey. He wasn't just looking for a pleasant evening, he wanted to cultivate a connection that could deepen over time. Each bullet point on his page represented a glimpse into his evolving identity, a man willing to openly communicate, ready to embrace vulnerabilities, and confident enough to share his aspirations. Tugging at the knot in his tie, he considered the implications of tonight. This wasn't merely a casual date, it was an opportunity to reinforce the narrative he was constructing for himself. He envisioned giving Caroline insight into the father he aspired to be, the partner who grounded his ambitions in honesty and authenticity. He tapped the pen against the table, pondering the balance of professional drive and personal attachment he'd been striving to create. As hours passed, anticipation transformed into a restless anxiety. Standing in front of the mirror yet again, he resisted the urge to second-guess himself. Instead, he acknowledged the nerves bubbling up from somewhere deep within, recognizing them as a sign that he was engaged, that he genuinely cared about the outcome of this evening. The hour to meet Caroline arrived, and he pulled up to the restaurant, welcoming the sight of bustling patrons filtering out of the building, each one a part of their own stories, filled with hopes and relationships. As he entered, a rush of warmth engulfed him, but so did the weight of self-doubt that he had often battled. What if she sees through the facade? He wondered briefly, before shaking his head as if to clear away the cloud of uncertainty. Max had fought too hard to wrestle back his own narrative, and he wouldn't let a small doubt take root. He stepped further in, casting his gaze around until it landed on Caroline. She looked effortless, radiating an ease that seemed to pull him in. "Hey! You made it," she beamed, standing to greet him. The sincerity in her eyes made his apprehensions flicker and fade. "Of course, couldn't miss it," he replied, forcing his lips into a smile that felt genuine beneath her bright demeanor. They settled into conversation, seamlessly drifting from light topics to matters of depth: dreams, fears, the nature of ambition. Max allowed himself to reveal the complexities of his life, sharing stories of struggles at work while weaving in joyful anecdotes about his time with Mia. His intent was to present honesty without overshadowing the humor and warmth that came from those experiences. Caroline listened intently, occasionally laughing and offering her own reflections. "You have a beautiful way of seeing things," she remarked, and he noticed how her gaze held his just long enough to encourage him further. But amid the buoyancy of the evening, buried grains of apprehension lingered. The haunting question from earlier pricked at him: was he building a bridge to genuine connection or simply masking the cracks of his reality? Could this intimate conversation hint at a relationship, or was it a fleeting moment in time? Then she drew closer, her voice lowering to a whisper. "Can I be honest? There's something about you, Max. I feel like there's more to you behind this." She waved her hand, emphasizing his polished exterior, this presentation. What was he ready to reveal? He knew he stood at a precipice, and it struck him that the path forward didn't just depend on his aspirations for a family or career. It hinged on his truth. The emotional excavation he was delaying gripped him like vines, threatening to pull him under. "What do you think you're not seeing?" he asked, his heart thumping a warning rhythm. As he dug deeper, he could feel the veil start to lift, but he also sensed that what lay beneath could prove tumultuous. As they exchanged layers of thought, he felt the shift in his core, a mix of dread and exhilaration about potentially unearthing hidden parts of himself. Whatever emerged could redefine this moment. This relationship, and unwillingly tie it to the man stood before her, trying to reconcile the various narratives of his life. Just then, his phone buzzed again, shattering his contemplation. The screen lit up with a notification from Clifford, the anticipation of a professional concern filling the air. Time felt suspended between the two conversations, the one with Caroline and the one awaiting him in the office. He inhaled deeply, recognizing this was his moment to decide: would he remain vulnerable and open about who he was becoming, or give in to the paralyzing fear of exposing vulnerabilities? Tonight was revealing itself as a pivotal juncture. He could either shy away from that transformative opportunity or embrace it. The decision hung thick in the air, tugging at the threads of every relationship he was weaving, professional and personal. Would he dare to expose the intricate complexity of his character as Caroline looked on expectantly, or would he choose to retreat back into the familiar darkness of uncertainty? Choices loomed ahead, but the path unfolded just as he felt ready to venture deeper into himself, into the unknown. Max's grip tightened around the stem of his wine glass as his thoughts collided like tectonic plates. For a moment, he considered retreat, to slip back into the safety of familiar conversation, where he could deftly sidestep the shadows of his past. Yet the weight of Caroline's gaze forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth: the longer he hid, the further he would be from building the connection he craved. "I'm not sure what you mean," he said, his voice steadier than his heart. He needed to test the waters, one foot in vulnerability and the other still reflecting the polished exterior he had built over the years. Caroline leaned in closer, her expression earnest. "I can see the layers, the way you navigate between what you show and what you hold back." There's a strength in her words, a resonance that made him reconsider. Her eyes were not simply searching for a facade but probing for genuineness. "I guess I don't always find it easy to share the messy parts," he admitted. His admission lay heavy in the air, a pin dropped into an expansive quiet. Despite how far he had come in being present with Caroline, he could feel the tide pull at his resolve. "Messy parts make us human. Everyone has them, right?" she said softly, the corners of her mouth lifting slightly. There was no judgment in her tone, no disdain for the imperfections that flitted beneath the surface. Her acceptance struck a chord within him, awakening a growing determination to navigate uncharted waters. The conversation swirled with an electric energy, and for the first time that evening, he felt a ripple of something different, hope mingled with trepidation. "What do you want to know?" he managed, his voice stronger as it broke the barrier of his self-imposed constraints. The question hovered, challenging his resolve, as he consciously pushed aside the instinctive urge to craft a safe narrative. "Anything," she replied. Her gaze dared him to plumb the depths of his story, and as the wine slid easily down his throat, he could feel the suppressed fears releasing their grip. "What about being a dad? What's the biggest challenge?" He felt 1,000 memories flicker in rapid succession: Mia's laughter, her inquisitive nature, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "It's a constant balancing act," he said, the answer unspooling with surprising clarity. "I want to be strong for her, to guide her right, but I often question if I'm doing enough. Sometimes I feel like I'm stumbling through it all." Caroline's expression softened, and he could see fragments of empathy flare in her eyes. "That sounds incredibly challenging. It's admirable, but you shouldn't feel alone in that." As he began to unpack his fears about fatherhood and his desire to reshape his future, the self-consciousness faded. In its place rose a shaky confidence, and with each word, he reclaimed pieces of his layered identity. But still, he found himself circling around an emotionally raw truth he feared to share: the isolation he'd often felt as a single dad. Max hesitated. The dance of vulnerability begged him to leap further into the unknown, to truly show himself. But exposing the most tumultuous corners of his life felt like balancing on a tightrope stretched over an abyss. "You know, it can feel lonely sometimes, balancing this personal life with my professional one," he confessed slowly. "It's like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders," Caroline interrupted gently, and he realized she understood. In this moment of honesty, he was sketching the outlines of his fear of failing his daughter, of becoming engulfed in the responsibilities that left little room for instability. As the words flowed between them, he sensed that their connection was solidifying with each exposed fragment of his internal world. The tension that had clung to the edges of their conversation began to dissipate like fog in the morning light. Then, just as the rapport swelled, a sharp buzz interrupted yet again. The notification blinked urgently, an unyielding reminder of his professional obligations. Bound to two worlds: his personal desires and the demands of leadership. Max felt the familiar pull. Would he retreat back into the safety of his career, or commit to embracing authenticity even if it left him vulnerable? Max looked at Caroline, her expression exuding patience and understanding, beckoning him to make a choice. The crescendo of emotions crashed as he weighed his options, the tension a gut-wrenching mix of ambition and yearning. Could he keep stepping toward deeper involvement at home while maintaining his drive professionally? Could he risk shattering the polished portrayal he had so carefully curated? And as he stared into Caroline's inquisitive gaze, the next wave of realization emerged. The time had come to face not only his past but also the man he yearned to become, the father and partner ready to embrace life as it unfolded. "Caroline, I don't know if I can," he began, heart racing, but the hiss of his phone suddenly became deafening. What lay ahead was an unexpected confrontation, and the question loomed like an approaching storm: would he seize this moment, unveiling what he had kept hidden, or retreat to the comfort of silence? Max drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment linger like a thick fog. He glanced at his phone, its screen flashing with reminders of deadlines he had accomplished rigorously, and of meetings that would wait for no one. But Caroline's gaze anchored him, her arms folded, her brow furrowed slightly with interest, embodying a warmth that stirred both anxiety and exhilaration within him. Maybe now is not the best time for me to focus on work," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, teetering on the brink of liberation. The truth felt unshackling. "Then what do you want to focus on?" Caroline pressed gently, her tone coaxing, a beacon of encouragement illuminating the uncertainty draping over him like a heavy cloak. She was inviting him to shift gears, to explore a realm beyond routine, one filled with authenticity and connection. Max's heart raced with conflicting thoughts. Every moment he spent contemplating his choices led him deeper into reflection. He could either exalt his role as a leader, a professional acknowledged for the polished image he presented, or he could embrace the fullness of his experience as a father, a flawed but immeasurably rich journey. It was not just about choosing one path, it was about realizing he could forge a new one altogether. "What if I told you," he began, the challenge sparking embers of creativity in his mind, "that I want to redefine success not just by the standards of my career but by the quality of my relationships?" His words hung in the air, a seismic shift. It felt daring to explore this uncharted territory. Rather than a dichotomy between work and home, he longed for a synergistic approach where both could thrive, where his essence as a father could coexist with his aspirations as a CEO. Caroline's reaction was immediate, her eyes widening slightly, awash with admiration. "That's such a profound realization, Max. A lot of people never reach that conclusion. It takes deep insight to know that one impacts the other." Her affirmation emboldened him. He pressed on, "I've always thought of leadership as an expression of control and ambition. But maybe true leadership is about being transparent, fostering a culture where people feel valued both at work and at home." In that abstract moment, he could envision the possibilities. He saw himself breaking away from the often invisible barriers he deconstructed, integrating lessons from fatherhood into his management style. It was a revelation his profession could benefit from vulnerability, the very characteristic he kept buried in his personal life. He glanced at Caroline, her features lit with an enthusiastic glow. It struck him how being honest about his struggles could humanize him in the eyes of his colleagues. If he shared the realities of being a single father, the struggles, joys, and lessons, it could create a ripple effect in his organization, challenging stereotypes around leadership and masculinity. "What's stopping you from doing that?" Caroline asked, her curiosity palpable, challenging him to share deeper thoughts. Max's mind raced with the myriad of obstacles lingering just beneath the surface: the fear of judgment, the fear of appearing weak, the fear of scaring off those who look to him for guidance. "It's the stigma, I guess. Leadership is often seen as a cold, calculated sport. But isn't that so outdated?" He was almost pleading with himself. "Absolutely. Real connection breeds stronger teams and more innovative ideas," she urged, her passion keeping pace with his burgeoning hope. With every word exchanged, Max felt the walls of hesitance begin to crumble. "I want to create an environment where everyone feels they can share their struggles without fear, maybe even introduce a mentorship program rooted in vulnerability." Their conversation spiraled towards a horizon of possibility, a corporate culture that wasn't just about profits but also about people. He had stumbled upon a plan that could change the trajectory of his professional life, a significant shift crafted from the essence of his greatest challenge, fatherhood. But just as excitement ignited within him, a gnawing doubt crept back in. Could he truly integrate this newfound philosophy into a place steeped in traditional corporate hierarchies? Would there be resistance from those who preferred the status quo? As he searched Caroline's face for answers, the implication of his connection to her grew clearer. Her support felt like a springboard, prompting him to leap into a new dimension, yet the fear of an uncertain landing held him back. "I want to explore this, Caroline." But the first step he paused, suddenly aware that this was no ordinary blind date. This was an inflection point, a critical moment of choice. "It starts with vulnerability," he concluded defiantly, embracing the unknown he sensed on the horizon. The tension crackled between them as they shared a moment of silence, both aware that deeper honesty would mark their next steps in all aspects of their lives. But with that clarity came a stark realization: vulnerability also invited the risk of rejection and the fear of isolation, themes he had run from for too long. "Max, if you're ready to take this leap," Caroline began, but the rapid vibration of his phone intervened. A flurry of notifications urgent, demanding his attention yet again. An internal storm brewed inside Max as he considered the tug-of-war happening in his mind. Would he seize this moment with Caroline, riding the wave of his evolving self, or would he be pulled back to the familiar routine of professional demands awaiting him like a hungry beast? He took a quick glance at the screen, the dilemma weighing heavy on him as he confronted the duality of his life. Would he forge ahead into uncharted depths or retreat into the known yet confining confines of corporate expectations? And as their eyes locked once more, the question lingered in the air: was he ready to transform, or would he allow the tide of obligation to sweep him back, missing this pivotal moment of truth? Max grabbed his phone, the pulsating notification screaming for attention, yet the prospect of sharing his insights with Caroline felt monumental. For a fleeting second, he considered silencing the chaos of his professional world. After all, wasn't this an opportunity to redefine his priorities? He hesitated, a simmering cocktail of doubt and aspiration coursing through him. What would he say if he chose to engage with Caroline instead? Could he articulate his emerging philosophy against the backdrop of his corporate existence? Would she still see value in his authenticity if he fought the impulse to retreat into his familiar role? With a swift glance at Caroline, he sensed her unwavering focus, an invitation wrapped in her curious demeanor. The room buzzed with potential, electric yet delicate, and Max realized he could shape this moment. He wasn't just a passive passenger in his own life. A singular thought crystallized in his mind: if he ever wanted to cultivate genuine connections at the office, he had to start here, with the person sitting across from him. "Sorry," he said finally, swiping the phone to silence it. "I need to be present." The decision threaded him further into vulnerability. It required him to shed layers of armor honed over years in the corporate trenches. "What if I told you that I've spent too much time hiding behind a facade?" "I want to change that," he confessed, watching her expression shift from curiosity to intrigue. That essay start, Max authenticity isn't just about being transparent, it's active. It's about living that truth. Caroline leaned closer, a gesture that shattered some of his walls. As they delved deeper, Max shared moments from his life as a father that kept him grounded, like the time he had to explain to his son why some days were darker than others, and how it taught him resilience. "That experience reshaped me. I've realized how much I compartmentalized my life to fit others' expectations." Caroline nodded, a gentle smile breaking through the intensity of their conversation. "And that's why your idea of integrating vulnerability in leadership is so powerful. It's like peeling back layers to reveal the real Max." But as her words sunk in, the specter of his corporate reality loomed larger. The vast ocean of potential change in his professional landscape appeared both enticing and menacing. Would this openness be met with applause or skepticism? What would his colleagues think if he began to share the messy, tangled threads of his life? An internal conflict reverberated within him, igniting a storm of second-guessing. The thought of stepping into the boardroom to unveil this new approach filled him with dread. Yet, alongside that fear flowed an invigorating sense of responsibility. He envisioned teams fortified not just by profits but by the strength of genuine relationships, all built on shared experiences and vulnerabilities. Can we cultivate an environment that encourages others to show their true selves? It could genuinely transform not only the work atmosphere but the very essence of leadership, he speculated aloud, picturing a strategy that revolved around shared humanity. "Absolutely," Caroline replied, the enthusiasm palpable between them. But remember, transformation takes time and it typically begins with yourself. People will follow your lead, but first, you must be unwavering in your own truth. Max pondered her words, recognizing that this wasn't merely about implementing a new policy but setting the stage for a cultural shift. He would have to confront the fear of criticism head-on. He would need to embrace perspectives contrasting with traditional expectations, risking dismissal and pushback. Suddenly, a new realization hit him. This journey was akin to the adventure of fatherhood filled with uncertainty, often marked by trial and error, and constantly in flux. I envision creating workshops and team-building sessions where people share not just their successes but struggles too. It could foster trust that transforms the way we work together, he articulated, his initial ideas transforming into a robust framework. As excitement began to build within him, something deeper stirred amidst the tumult. Alongside the ambition to revolutionize corporate culture was a realization that the changes he sought would inevitably require him to confront his past hesitations and emotion he had long buried under the guise of professionalism. Feeling a weight lift, he glanced at Caroline, who seemed as invigorated as he was. You know what, Max? If you're devoted to this path, be prepared for those that might fight against it. Not everyone is ready to embrace the change you're envisioning. His heart raced, that was the truth he'd been avoiding. I get it, he replied, revelation washing over him. I have to brace myself for resistance, but I also have to remember my role isn't to manage the perceptions of others. It's to lead by example and create a space where change can happen, one conversation at a time. Just as he began to feel grounded in this newfound strength, his phone vibrated again, an insistent reminder of the commitments calling him back. This time, however, Max felt fortified enough to stand at the precipice of his journey. Maybe I can harness this momentum and take it into work on Monday, he mused aloud, gathering his thoughts. But as he spoke, uncertainty tightened around him like a perimeter fence. What if he was wrong? What if this plan unraveled before it even began? Caroline leaned in, her voice soft yet firm. Max, you're no longer just contemplating change, you're actually crafting it. Remember that nervous energy as you step forward, it's a sign of growth. Let it inspire you. As her words hung in the air, he knew the moment he had shared with her was transformative. Yet it was only the beginning. His gaze drew back to his phone, where notifications continued to flood in. He took a steady breath. He was standing at a defining crossroad. Would the leap he was contemplating lead to the liberation he sought, or would it plunge him into an abyss of self-doubt? The stakes were high, the atmosphere taut with the weight of anticipation, as Max braced himself for the next chapter, one that demanded courage, clarity, and an undeniable commitment to his truth. Max woke up the next morning with a tightness in his chest, the weight of his newfound intentions pressing down on him. He lingered over his coffee, the steam rising like the fog of uncertainty in his mind. The clock ticked insistently, Monday awaited with its demands, and he felt the tug of anxiety grip him. Would he step into the office embodying the authenticity he had pledged to pursue? Or would the old habits ensnare him once again? He recalled his conversation with Caroline, the inspiration her words had ignited. But reality's sharp edges clawed at his optimism. Max had traversed the corporate landscape for too long, each pitfall reinforcing a fear of exposing his vulnerabilities. Was he about to risk everything for a dream that felt both exhilarating and terrifying? Driving to work, he rehearsed his strategy, but every time he tried to articulate his vision, it sounded hollow, a rehearsed script devoid of true conviction. What if his colleagues scoffed at his vulnerability initiative? Their skeptical faces flickered in his mind, each imagined expression a dagger aimed at his resolve. Upon reaching the office, the familiar buzz of energy was palpable, yet it felt constricting. As he stepped onto the elevator, the tension buoyed around him like a force field. He was outnumbered by uncertainty and second-guessing. The other executives remained anchored in their roles, operating under the guise of efficiency and success. What would they say when he slid his plan across the conference table? That thought gnawed at him as he shuffled into his office. He glanced around at the carefully curated decor, a blend of success, accolades, and corporate jargon all vying for attention. At that moment, Max questioned everything he once held dear about this place. The tangible reminders of achievement felt overshadowed by the absence of connection. If he wanted to change the environment, he needed to dismantle the facade surrounding him. Taking a deep breath, he opened his laptop. Would it be reckless to draft an email proposing the idea to the team? Instead of allowing inertia to paralyze him, he decided to channel the pulse of fear into something productive. Max began typing, outlining his vision of vulnerability in leadership, articulating a shift toward authenticity within the company's culture. Momentum began to swell within him, each keystroke a step toward self-assertion. As he hit send, a rush of adrenaline coursed through him. The act heralded a new chapter. He was no longer merely an observer of his own potential. But with each new moment came the visceral pang of coiling dread. What if the response was unfavorable? What if his colleagues attacked his character, questioning his professionalism? Max pulled up the proposals of his peers, proclaiming robust quarterly goals, but his mind drifted back to discussions about real-world challenges: the loss, the struggle, the need for clarity in a world painted with superficial success. Hours passed, and the predictable hum of business rattled on, but internally, Max revolved on a different axis. The gravity of his decision weighed heavily on him as he contemplated slipping out of his comfort zone entirely. He needed a trial run, a pitch that would allow him to gather feedback and refine his ideas before presenting them to the larger group. He recalled the suggestion he had made to Caroline about holding workshops. Perhaps a small pilot session, a gathering replete with sharing and introspection, would pave the way for further discussions. He could gauge how receptive the team truly was to his vision in a less threatening environment. Later that day, he found the courage to approach two colleagues he trusted, Sarah and Tom, whose insights had often inspired his own. Gathering them after hours, he shared hastily sketched plans, fueled with trepidation but glimmering with hope. What if we modeled a workshop on vulnerability? Encouraging open dialogue about our challenges and failures, he proposed, measuring their reactions. Tom raised an eyebrow, skepticism illuminating his features. I can see how that might feel uncomfortable for some. Not everyone is ready to dive into personal stories. True, Max conceded, the ground beneath him shifting. But isn't this an opportunity for us to redefine how we work together? Build stronger connections even if it feels a bit messy? Sarah leaned forward, a thoughtful gleam in her eye. I see potential here. It could be refreshing to break the ice. In our positions, we rarely get to show our true selves. It might be the spark we need. Encouraged by her response, Max felt a surge of validation. This was the path forward, a methodical approach that still allowed for genuine connection. But doubt lingered, casting shadows over his excitement. Would they rally behind him, or would the fear of vulnerability stifle their enthusiasm? As he returned home that evening, the emotional pendulum swung back and forth, each moment spent teetering between hope and trepidation. Aligning himself with the fear of vulnerability meant confronting the very constructs he had long avoided. Max stood at the threshold of his home, looking at his reflection in the glass door. The image staring back held the weight of a father, a leader, and most importantly, a man on the verge of change. He felt the cracks of self-imposed barriers beginning to move, the fracture lines widening. Maybe this journey was meant to disturb his preconceived notions, pushing him toward an ending unknown. But just as he stepped inside, a notification chimed on his phone, capturing his attention. With a racing heart, he glanced at the screen and saw it, an email from the boardroom addressed to him, the subject line bold and unyielding, feedback requested on your recent proposal. His breath caught as the gravity of this unsolicited response twisted in his gut. What would it reveal? Max took a deep, steadying breath, bracing himself for the impending confrontation of ambitions fulfilled or dreams quelled. As the door shut behind him, the world on the other side felt both reassuringly familiar and tantalizingly dangerous. He was ready to discover who he truly was beneath the weight of expectations. The time had come to confront the chain of doubt holding him back and to face the reactions of those around him, the moment that would determine the course of his ambition. Max awoke the following day with a renewed sense of clarity pulsating in his veins, the electronic hum of city life outside his window offering a mild comfort. No longer did he feel trapped beneath the weight of expectation. Instead, he was energized by the prospect of landmark changes ahead, both personally and professionally. Today marked a pivotal point, the culmination of the insights gained through vulnerability and shared experiences with Caroline. As he sipped his morning coffee, the familiar tension in his stomach dissipated, replaced by solid determination. The email he had received the night before loomed large in his mind, its implications cascading over him like waves. Was he truly ready to confront the boardroom with his revolutionary ideas about integrating vulnerability and fostering a more humane workplace? Upon arriving at the office, the atmosphere buzzed with the usual energy, but Max felt a shift within himself, a resoluteness that had crystallized overnight. As he navigated through the open space of cubicles and glass walls, he owned the moments of hesitation that used to shackle him. His decision to launch a workshop on vulnerability had ignited a flame he wasn't willing to extinguish. He stopped and exchanged nods with colleagues, the uncertainty from prior days replaced by an emerging confidence. He headed into his office and took a moment to look at the email again, a cold reminder of what he sought to defy. With a deep breath, he countered the anxiety licking at the edges of his determination. This time, he would turn doubt into drive. Crafting a response became a tangible release. He began to clarify his proposal for the workshop, outlining its potential benefits, how it could enhance team dynamics while simultaneously breaking down barriers of conventional corporate communication. The idea flowed quickly, invigorating him as he typed. Emphasizing shared humanity in a workplace designed to limit emotional expression felt like seeking freedom. Once he hit send, the act rang with finality. He was no longer merely plotting an escape, he was embarking on a journey toward transformation. The impression of heading into the boardroom felt less like impending doom and more like wielding a key to unlock potential, both for himself and for his co-workers. "Max, can I have a word?" Sarah's voice pulled him from his reverie. Her expression was serious yet encouraging, and he could sense an opportunity unfolding before them. He nodded, gesturing for her to enter his office. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "I just read your email regarding the workshop proposal. I think it's brilliant. But I also know how some may react when we start discussing vulnerability out loud," she warned, her brows knitting together slightly. Max felt a surge of respect for her honesty. "I recognize that," he replied. "It won't be an easy conversation, but I believe it's utterly necessary. If we stand any chance at connecting more deeply in our work, we first need to accept our insecurities. I'm ready to move forward." Sarah nodded, her smile affirming the shift in his energy. "I will back you on it. Let us rally the team before the meeting and prep them for what's to come. It might minimize the shock." The encouragement bolstered him, and together they began to develop methods that would showcase their initiative, ensuring it felt like an invitation rather than an imposition. One step at a time, they engaged in thoughtful discourse about how colleagues could embrace these ideas, minimizing fear while allowing the chance for collective growth. By the time the meeting was upon him, anticipation filled the room, tugging at varying levels of curiosity and apprehension. As he stepped to the front, he felt the air thick with expectation, but a calm swept over him. Recognizing this moment as an opportunity to soar into new living dimensions meant he had the power to influence change. "Thank you for joining today," he began. "I am excited to discuss a pivotal initiative focused on fostering vulnerability and connection within our team." He scanned the faces. Before him some nodding in agreement, others apprehensive. In order to achieve meaningful results, we must learn to embrace our authentic selves. His heart thrummed in the ensuing silence, but he pressed on. I believe we can break down barriers and cultivate an environment where every voice matters, where fear takes a back seat to vulnerability and authenticity. Gradually, murmurs filled the air as dialogue sparked questions, insights, and even concerns emerged, rippling through the group, but each exchange grew into trust-filled interaction instead of despair. Their collective excitement began to outshine the initial skepticism, and he realized they were ready to explore possibilities despite their past experiences tethering them to norms. By the end of the session, as Max looked around at his coworkers engaging through laughter and shared stories, an overwhelming sense of fulfillment sparked within him. He had taken concrete action, standing firmly in his identity: a father, a leader, a man embracing every inch of his journey, celebrating both triumphs and vulnerability alike. The week surged ahead, with preparations for the workshop aiding in the honing of relationships, nurturing culture amidst the usual pressures of deadlines. Conversations bubbled over lunch tables, laughter echoed within shared spaces. Empathy bloomed as his colleagues began to open up not just in meetings but in daily interactions, unveiling snippets of their own struggles and ambitions. Through this authentic expression, Max cultivated a newfound confidence that radiated from within him. Each moment transformed the company culture, and a profound realization struck him: he had transcended barriers that had long held others captive, bringing the team together through empathy and connection. Later that month, the workshop itself played out like a harmonious symphony, everyone engaging in heartfelt sharing, challenges, and joys. It represented everything he hoped to achieve: an atmosphere where acceptance flourished, allowing colleagues to flourish side by side. As he led discussions, Max reflected on his growth not merely as a CEO, but as a father and a human being. Taking pride in the promises he cherished now felt like a self-affirming treasure rather than a daunting burden. Every achievement was born from the willingness to be vulnerable, and with that came the kind of trust that shifted dynamics. Underneath the laughter of his lively team, amid the shared hopes and realization of diverse narratives, Max became aware that real leadership resided not only in success but aligned intimately with nurturing relationships cultivated within courage. And as the sun dipped below the horizon once more, illuminating the daily life of his intricately connected world, he understood that he had conquered not just professional walls, but the confines he once imposed on himself. With that, he felt true fulfillment, solid confidence surging through him as he embraced his dual roles, both as a leader forging unprecedented paths and as a devoted father nurturing love and joy within his home. His journey fostered not just professional recognition, but illuminated truth, navigating through life's complexities birthed connection, and those connections mattered as they intertwined disappointment with limitless potential. Now, empowered and whole, he was ready for anything. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.